Um, but as to what the next 50 minutes, we're actually bang on time, will look like, I'll give a wee introduction to Future Shift ourselves. Then we will have the wise Chloe Healy from B Lab Ireland, who is going to give an absolute rundown of what B Corp looks like in Ireland. She also has a fabulous European perspective for anyone looking a bit broader. And you'll get a real kind of in-depth learning from Chloe there, which is great. And then we have the wonderful Louise O'Connor, who I actually met down in Clare. Had a brief chat with her at the dinner afterwards and was kind of taken in by your energy. Absolutely. And we had a wee catch up then, kind of since I've moved back to Ireland, and I thought she would be a great person to have on the panel. So we'll have a very kind of informal back and forth chat between ourselves and Louise, and she'll spill all the knowledge about what it means to become a B Corp, what the journey looks like, and how she kind of progressed through it with strong roots. And then what we always like to do to kind of end the sessions is we will just open the floor up to everybody to kind of chip in, have a bit of back and forth. If you have any burning questions, anything essentially that you want to ask around B Corp or even not B Corp, sustainability in general, do feel free to kind of chip in. And before the final words, just a quick mention that today's meeting is going to be recorded, just in line with GDPR, so we're always obliged to mention that. And then we'll kind of have a few final words as to, what the next steps could be if you are intrigued by the opportunity to become a B Corp. And if you just want a bit more kind of an in-depth or one-to-one to find out how the specifics work with your business in general. So just as a wee intro to Future Shift, I'm going to bring Will into the fray here. I like to call him the Jack Charlton because he is from Bristol and he is an English man managing an Irish team. So without further ado, we'll bring Will in here to give a bit of backdrop into Future Shift, when it started and kind of what it looks like now.
And cheers, Gav. It's not very often that I'm the only English person on the call. And often with Gav, I'll like slip into a little bit of Irish accent every now and then, but I will refuse to do so out of lack of offence causing. But yeah, thanks for introing, Gav. So last week I founded Future Shift 5 years ago, so we celebrated our 5th birthday last week. So a quick rundown of where we've been. It's been a fairly long journey in terms of the ups and downs of B Corp, but obviously we were founded 5 years ago as kind of a fledgling business, just kind of working out how business can really interact with sustainability, and we worked out the way that businesses interact is kind of broken. Most people kind of see it as a bolt-on and nice to have. It's done in silo, and it's something which you pay £800 a day for a consultant to come in and do, and they leave, and all the sustainability leaves with them. So we kind of set up to redesign what sustainability means for business. And by that, we mean kind of embedding it within your whole organization. Our biggest KPI is how many job descriptions we can change to include a line of sustainability within it. And a big medium for us in order to kind of integrate sustainability, and the best way in which we do it with an organization is through helping companies become B Corp certified. So started in year 1, working out where we were. Year 2, we actually kind of cracked on back in 2022, 2021, and helped the first few organizations through the B Corp standard. We started integrating with workshops and such. We expanded our services within B Corp then. We started working with the likes of Danelm, some of the big organizations over in the UK, kind of embedding it within a bigger size business. And we started to grow the team now. We've got yourself, Gav. We've got the people over in UAE. And now we're in a lovely state in 2025 where we're preparing for the new standards, which I'm sure anyone who's cracking on with B Corp is grappling with, and it's become their 9 to 5 is full of it. And right now, it's pretty pedal to the metal, understanding it, but it's also incredibly exciting working out how businesses can embed it on a deeper level. instead of kind of looking through a points lens. Actually, how does it interact within your supply chains, moving from a point of setting targets to actually showing progress, which is very much where B Corp needs to go, but so does sustainability. So that's kind of a quick rundown of where we've been, but I thought I'd jump in and share our 5-year story effectively. I'll hand back over to you now, Gav.
Cheers, Jack. Great performance there from the manager. Right, so I just have 2 screens going on here, so bear with me for 5 seconds once I get it over. Cool. Yeah, so that's just like a wee background to kind of Future Shift from 2021 until now. Really kind of great team we have going on here. Loads of different kind of areas of expertise, and yeah, just kind of excited to see where it goes. But enough about ourselves. Let's bring some expertise from B Lab into the equation here. So going to welcome Chloe to give a bit of a backdrop on the B Lab movement itself, specific to Ireland, an overview of what the old standards look like. We'll kind of touch on the new standards that are coming in 2026. But yeah, without further ado, I'll let Chloe take over here on presenting her slides.
Thank you, Gav. Okay. Hey, well, hello everyone. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Chloe, and as Gav shared, I'm a community manager in B Lab Ireland. So I joined the team now about 2 years ago, right before we launched B Lab Ireland in November of 2023. And since then, I've been responsible for building and supporting the growing Irish B Corp community here in Ireland. On a personal level, I'm someone who's always been very passionate about sustainability and purpose-led business. It was when I was working in New York a couple of years ago in a zero-waste e-commerce kind of early stage startup that I actually learned about B Corp. Got very excited about it. We were an organization that was very strong in terms of our sustainability principles, but we probably had some room to grow when it came to maybe the people and governance side of things. So B Corp is something we really were looking towards as this framework that could help us to become a better organization as we scaled. And we were kind of going through our Series A round at the time as well. So it was important for us to create an organization that was strong and resilient, and that would also attract the correct investors. Then a couple of years later, and sort of a lot of life and travel in between, I was moving back home and I saw that the movement was starting to take off in Ireland, which I was so excited about, and I just made it my mission to be a part of it. I think that while no business is perfect, and B Corps definitely themselves, do align with that sort of thinking, I do believe that businesses such as B Corps, they are businesses that are thriving because not only are they innovating, creating jobs, contributing to economies, they're also taking care of their people and they're earning trust, both from the people in the organization, but also their customers. And they're just doing their bit to also look after the environments that they're working in. And before I get started and sort of jump into telling you a little bit about what B Corp and the movement itself is, I would love to get a quick hands up, maybe a thumbs up or in the chat, if who here, already is aware of B Corp, first of all. So if I could get a hands or a little thumb up, it'd be great to see. Okay, fab, we have a few people. And then keep your hands raised if you are already using the B Impact assessment tool. So if you've started to kind of learn a little bit about, what the B Corp standards are themselves. Okay, great. We still have a couple of people. And then finally, I would love to know who on the call today is, aiming to become a B Corp, let's say in the next 12 or 24 months. Okay, great. Still some hands raised. That's great to see, and it's fantastic. You're exactly the type of people, that we want to speak to today. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about B Lab and B Corps. So B Lab, first of all, the organization that I work for is the global nonprofit behind the B Corp movement. What we do is we set the standards for responsible business, and we certify companies known as B Corps that meet high levels of social environmental performance, transparency, and accountability. And crucially, B Corps also, through this process of becoming a B Corp, legally commit through quite a simple change in their governing documents to balance profit along with purpose. So what this means is that going forward, they will be considering the impact of their decisions that they're making on their workers, their customers, and the people like suppliers, the community, and the environments that their organizations are running in, and not just shareholders. So they, of course, will consider shareholders as well, but they take kind of a broader lens when it comes to making decisions. And globally today, we have surpassed, more than 10,000 certified B Corps. These companies, are some of the most recognizable and successful brands in the world, and I'm sure many of you will recognize some of them on the left here. We of course have Bailey's, which is an Irish great company. We have Innocent Drinks, Tony's Chocolonely, and more. And together today, B Corps across the globe are employing more than 1 million people. And that's across more than 160 different industries. So B Corp isn't just a certification that's for kind of one kind of business or a business in a certain region. It's something that really has a lot of value for organizations, regardless of really the size or stage you're at, or maybe sort of what your goals are. There's a lot of things that B Corp can really support you with, which we'll dive into in a little bit more detail. And all these companies essentially are, coming together with this shared goal of really building an economic system that is benefiting, people, communities, and the planet as well. And I think the sheer size of this movement, the momentum that we've seen, particularly over the last several years, really proves that better business is here to stay. It's not just a trend. We're actually seeing, I would say, like a cultural shift in business, and every day more companies are deciding to join. So let's take a look at Ireland. Here in Ireland, although we are definitely in the early stages of growth, we actually have one of the fastest growing B Corp communities globally. Today, we have now almost 100 certified B Corps in the Republic of Ireland, and they represent 2 billion in revenue and more than 6,000 employees. So since B Lab launched in November of 2023, so just a little bit over 2 years since then, the number of certified B Corps in Ireland has actually quadrupled, which is really incredible. To give you a little bit of context into our growth in Ireland, last year, the number of companies here that are certified grew by 82%, and we welcomed in 27 new companies. And this year, we're on track to meet very similar growth goals. I can share that as of today, the 19th of November, we've certified 40 companies in Ireland this year. And there is a lot more companies that are, in the final stages of the review that will be certified before the end of the year as well. And I think it's important to note that, so we're talking about around 100 businesses here. There's a further 20 in Northern Ireland that technically fall under the UK, but they're very much connected to and a part of our community here in Ireland. Secondly, there's a further 350 or so B Corps, international B Corps, that have operations and team members in Ireland. Some great examples there, and I'm sure some people on the call today are familiar with the teams, like in Innocent Drinks, in Patagonia. There's many more, teams like that are very connected and are really active in growing the B Corp movement in Ireland, growing awareness around B Corp, and getting involved in collective action projects and collaborating with other B Corps as well. So there's a lot of businesses joining the movement here, but why are Irish companies actually joining the movement? There's several reasons. I'm going to walk through some of them today, and I think Louise will probably potentially touch on some of them with her journey as well. So the first is that customers and talent are demanding it. So in 2024, a study in Ireland found that 93% of Irish consumers believe company directors or CEOs should be accountable for social and environmental performance. That same study also showed that 63% of Irish people are using certifications like B Corp when they're making decisions around products and services they want to buy, but also the companies that they want to work for. So we're seeing a big shift in terms of how people are approaching companies that they want to align with and they want to buy from or actually work for themselves. Secondly, it's driving real business growth. So we're really seeing that investing in people and planet is paying off on the bottom line for businesses as well. And in Europe and UK, we're consistently seeing that B Corps are outperforming their peers, which we kind of speak as ordinary businesses. So for example, the past year, B Corps grew the revenue by 20%. That's almost 7 times higher than the national average of 3% for ordinary businesses. This study was done specifically in the UK, so I think it's also very relevant for the Irish audience today, as we share a lot in common in terms of our business structures and the economy. And businesses are also growing then, of course, their employee headcount, their impact, their operations. And we saw employee headcount in the UK rose by 11% in B Corps versus a national average of 2%. And that again is last year. So it's very recent that we're seeing that. And then the other piece is that, B Corp really helps to drive internal value. So 91% of B Corps believe that certification has a positive impact on their organization. And that definitely goes beyond just what they get from going through the process and certifying. It's actually afterwards they're seeing all these like knock-on effects and benefits. And Irish companies themselves are, seeing these benefits from household names like Bailey's and Bewley's, and alongside, some fast-growing, amazing startups that we have here like Bread 41, Autonomy, Grid Finance, 3 great Irish companies and B Corps that are currently, in the EY of the Year, Entrepreneur of the Year awards. And of course, companies like Louise used to work for Strong Roots, and they're seeing a lot of value. And, when it comes to finding investors, when it comes to finding great talent, being able to retain them, and so on. There's so many, positive results that we're seeing there. And then also just to touch on that, awareness is growing, and as that continues to grow, I think we'll see more benefits there as well. So for example, 1 in 4 people globally now are aware of B Corp, but that's also true in Ireland. So we did a study last year, and we actually saw brand awareness in Ireland grow by 11%, up to 26%. And that's just in a 1-year period. And I think that's largely down to the visibility of B Corp as we have more companies joining the movement. And then also we have a lot of events and things happening to really support that. So just jumping in really quickly to the new standards and what you can expect as a company if you're interested in going through the process over the next several years. So in April of this year, we launched kind of new standards. It was like a general overall update to our existing standards. So continuous improvement is something that has always been a part of B Lab's DNA. And actually, since the standards were first launched 20 years ago, they have been updated 6 times previous. This update is just the largest. So you'll see the new kind of terminology is version 2.1. So we're in kind of a new era of the B Corp movement, and certainly a new area of business impact and what it looks like. The standards really are designed to give companies clear kind of understanding and tangible actions to take more, to take more urgent action against, the issues that are facing people and planet that I'm sure all of us are more than aware of, and we see in the news every day. So what are in the new standards? Well, the standards require businesses to take meaningful action against 7 different impact topic areas. The first 3 are fair work, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and human rights. So these are really all focused on people, ensuring companies are providing good quality jobs, creating positive workplace cultures, making sure that they have inclusive and diverse workplaces. That's then going to contribute to more just and equitable communities. And overall, making sure they're treating people in every area of the organization and supply chain with dignity and respect. The next 2 impact topic areas are climate action and environmental stewardship and circularity. That one's quite a mouthful, I won't lie. And this is really just enabling companies to take action to help combat the climate crisis and to sort of demonstrate how they are operating in a way that is going to contribute towards a more circular economy based on their operations and value chain. Now, this may not be super relevant for every type of company, but if you are in specific industries that can play a big role here, you will be seeing a lot more kind of requirements asked of you in relation to those impact topics. And then finally, the last 2 is government affairs and collective action, and purpose and stakeholder governance. So it's making sure that businesses are acting in accordance with a defined purpose, and that they're playing a leadership role essentially in implementing solutions towards this, new kind of way of doing business that we all want to see. If you're interested in learning more about these, I definitely recommend going straight to B Impact if you're not there already. It's sort of an all-in-one platform. It's going to have a self-assessment area in it that's going to actually detail the new standards and the requirements that are within them. So definitely recommend using it. And even if you're not on a track to become a B Corp, let's say in the next 12 months or so, this tool is free and it's something you can still use to really help you embed impact into every area of your organization. Then lastly, I'll just touch on some quick resources that can support you. The first place I would go to if you're interested in certifying or learning about what certification actually entails is the Certification Hub. In there, you're going to get access to lots of great guides that you can see on the screen here, from what is the new certification process like, what are the scoping requirements, if I'm kind of an organization that's a bit more complex and has related entities or has a parent company or something like that. Just one other one I'd point out is we actually have evidence guides per impact topic. So that will be music to a lot of people's ears on this call. What that essentially means is there's a list of the evidence that you need to provide to show that you're meeting each requirement of the new standards. So in advance really what would be asked of you when you're in the review process to show that you're verified to be meeting the standards. Then finally, just in terms in Ireland, we do have a newsletter called B Scale. If you're not already signed up, I definitely recommend it. This will give you insights into events that we have and other things and opportunities. And I think events are just a great way, like today actually, to really understand what's happening within the movement and where there's different support available. And then finally, we do have a new learning platform coming in Europe very soon. I think it will actually be released potentially tomorrow. And that would be a great way for anyone on the call to get in-depth understanding of each of the new impact topic areas. Of course, you could always reach out to us in Ireland, and I'm sure Gav will share the slides afterwards or our contact as well. But I'm going to stop there, and of course, let me know if there's any questions.
Amazing, Chloe. That was an absolutely perfect rundown of B Corp in Ireland from day one all the way up until now. Interesting to hear the kind of different facts and figures behind the movement itself. It always kind of provides a bit of a backdrop to people and a bit of understanding and an entry point, which is always welcomed. Yeah, so thanks for that, Chloe. Delighted to bring Louise into the equation here now. What we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor. We'll have a bit of a back and forth between ourselves and Louise. But I suppose first off the bat, let me share screen, and we'll get everyone's lovely faces back on show here. So I suppose, yeah, as I said, we like to kind of keep these nice and open. Feel free for everyone to kind of chip in. There's 12, 13, 14 of us on the call here. So it's a nice small group to kind of have that interaction. But first of all, Louise, after kind of meeting you in Clare and then following up, I was definitely intrigued by your energy that you brought to kind of Strong Roots. I suppose first off the bat, when did you first come across B Corp yourself, and what kind of inspired the conversation and the movements within Strong Roots to kind of explore the route?
So for those who don't know, Strong Roots is a frozen plant-based food company, and I joined the business quite early on. My background prior to that was in NGOs, non-profits, that kind of advocacy and activism side. So Strong Roots was the first business I ever worked in. And I'm actually kind of ruined now for ever working for other businesses that aren't B Corps, because I don't think I could actually stomach it based on my experiences so far, because I just think having that ethos is so important to me. And it kind of allowed me to step kind of from a very kind of black and white moral space into business where things maybe have to be a little bit grayer, or traditionally have been a bit grayer in terms of what's right and wrong. But actually, one of the things that B Corp turned out to be was a bit of a guiding star in terms of staying on the right track. So I joined, and my first big job was to certify Strong Roots as a B Corp. So Sam, who founded Strong Roots, Sam Denigan, it was on his radar for a couple of reasons. He had kind of mentor, like he was the mentee in a couple of relationships of people who ran B Corps or had been involved with B Corps. So a couple of them were Ben & Jerry's, obviously everyone knows, and Freud Communications in London. So it's already firmly on his radar, despite it being, I think we first spoke about it in 2019. So ended up joining the business. My first job was to certify us as a B Corp, and became certified the same week as another B Corp Earth's Edge. So either the 5th or the 6th B Corp in Ireland. So really kind of ahead of the curve, and fair play to Sam for having his finger on the pulse. But I think he realized, having founded Strong Roots as a business that is always going to be plant-based, because he saw the value in offering kind of exciting things that were made out of plants and were as tasty as anything else and as easy to cook as anything else, and the value of frozen in that space as well. So recognizing, like, in terms of food waste and portions and everything like that, like frozen can be an amazing resource for people as an option. We were already in a good spot when it came to looking at B Corp as a certification. So our proposition was strong, and then it was a matter of kind of starting to look at all the various impact requirements and how we met them or didn't, and how we could go about meeting them in order to certify. So I can get into that whole process now if you like, but it took us, we were kind of looking in terms of the wait list, because we were quite an early adopter. We submitted and had to wait about 6 months before we certified. So the whole process, only inverted commas, took about 6 months. But I can get into kind of what we had to do in between as well.
Just Louise, on the point that kind of like the ethos and the alignment as like a plant-based brand, it's like inherently sustainable, right? So it already has that kind of mission from the get-go. In terms of like the interaction with the B Corp, different impact areas, did you find any kind of like moments of enlightenment across, say, community or workers or governance that was maybe like a bit of an eye-opener that, okay, we need to do a bit more in this section, despite the fact that our kind of offering as a plant-based brand is quite solid itself?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like, on the pleasant side, it helped us to acknowledge how strong we were actually on the workers side of things. So when you think, we had a lot of certs for our products. So we had Vegan Society, obviously things like for the States, we had non-GMO, we had FSC cardboard, you know, things that related to very specific parts of our products. But in terms of an overall certification, this is the first time we'd really seen how we measured up as a whole business. That's one of the things I love about B Corp as a consumer, by the way. Like, I shop myself, obviously, and I shop for my family. And when I see a B Corp logo, I already know they're doing a really good job in terms of how they behave as an entire business and not just the product I have in my hand. So workers, yeah, it was nice kind of acknowledgement that we were supporting a lot and offering a lot. And I saw that in action a few times when people kind of were going through very hard things. Like, I saw how the business supported them and stayed in touch and supported their family and things like that. So that was a really nice acknowledgement. And then probably the most daunting part was, because we did not own our supply chain, and that might strike a chord with some of the people on this call. We didn't own any factories. We don't own any vans, anything like that. So really, I think it's 99% of our emissions come from scope 3. But at this point in time, I didn't have any kind of grip on that. So it was a really kind of good first step in understanding, okay, what does a company need to know? Like, it was almost from scratch in terms of emissions. So what does a company need to know, and how do you go about doing that? And understanding that, okay, as a good first step, 1 and 2, the emission scopes that are within our control. So like, even just our kind of HQ electricity, the mileage for our cars, things like that, just getting first a handle on that, and then tackling the supply chain piece by piece. So understanding that even if you don't own the factories, like the suppliers you're working with, they should have the data, and if they don't, they should start, you know, making sure they have it, because they'll be asked it from every direction. If they're not already, they'll have other customers that are asking them. They'll have possibly regulations requiring them to do it if they don't already. And so understanding that, then once you get a handle on your own kind of HQ story, you can break down the rest into manageable pieces like logistics, raw ingredients, manufacturing and packaging, things like that. So it helped me really start to understand which steps to take first and how to go about them. So yeah, I would say environment is the most daunting, just because it's also the one that kind of, in my opinion, is in consumers' minds first. Like, still to this day, Strong Roots is in plastic packaging for our chips and nuggets and hash browns and things like that. And I think plastic is just such a visible bit of evidence of like not being perfect as a company, that it's definitely the feedback we were getting the most from consumers directly, like, I love you, but you're in plastic. So I think, yeah, there's like, you won't be perfect. You might never be perfect, but you can definitely start and understand where you can improve and like kind of start to make a bit of a time frame for improvement. And the first time we certified, so I led us through one certification and one recertification. And I suppose naturally we did improve quite a lot, but when we first certified, we were quite early on in our journey. We were on the right track, and we were on the right, far enough along the right track that B Lab were able to acknowledge that. And then in between, we continued to improve.
Yeah, amazing. It kind of reiterates like the point that I suppose B Corp it's a great like entry point or framework into sustainability. So, you know, when you're first initially going through the assessment, it is that kind of eye opener as to what you could kind of do better, and it might kind of unravel the whole business at times as to show the value behind it. But in terms of like internally, was there many people kind of involved? Did it excite people? Could you kind of see the benefits internally in the journey to becoming a B Corp, but also kind of remaining a B Corp and getting that message around, becoming like part of the community of B Lab? So yeah, did you find much kind of like internal benefits to that as such?
Yeah, I think there was a world of difference between first certifying and then recertifying 3 years later. And a lot of that is credit to Chloe and the B Lab Ireland team, because just the knowledge of B Lab in general had improved so greatly. And then globally as well, of course, like our biggest market is the UK, and then the US, and then Ireland. So consumers in all of our major markets were more familiar with B Corp the second time around. And also we had so many opportunities and done so much as a team that a lot more people were invested in the process the second time around. So I think the first time around, people were like, oh, you need, like, what is this? You need this data. They give me what I needed, but they were like, what is, you know, why are you asking me? This is on top of my regular job, and I don't want to be bothered too much. But of course, by the second time around, everyone was so supportive of it, and we had much more of a involved team who felt like they were real stakeholders in the process. And we had done a lot in between. We'd done a lot of collaborations with individual brands. We had done activations in Ireland, including actually that was afterwards, but we had a microsite with Musgrave, Super Value, highlighting all the B Corp brands that are on shelves in Ireland for the consumer. We had done an activation with Sainsbury's in the UK and their HQ. And I think I must say as well, HR would say that it's basically mentioned in almost every single interview. Like the interviewee themselves will bring it up as an attractive proposition for them to work for the business. And obviously the cynical side of me is like, well, some of those people will have just Googled the business, you know, the week before and learned all about B Corp. Hey, but that's still a good thing. But some of them really do. I mean, I saw myself over the 6 years, like people were coming in really excited to work for a B Corp. Some of them had previously worked for a B Corp. I think there's stats on how often people move between B Corps as well. So a lot of people were very excited and proud to work for a B Corp. And even in our engagement surveys that happened quarterly in Strong Roots, like one of the questions is around, like, I can't remember the phrasing, but it's like Strong Roots, I feel as a Strong Roots staff member that it lives up to its B Corp values or something like that. So it's definitely front and center in everyone's minds, and it's a real source of pride in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even from my own personal experience when I was making the big jump from Dublin over to London, I was kind of on the hunt for a business with Not one, just kind of ethical and sustainable values, and that was the industry I was intrigued in. But I was specifically kind of looking out for B Corp. So I do always kind of mention that whenever somebody brings it up. It was like a key point for me in my job search. And here I am today. But there's definitely kind of them tangible benefits internally. So we always talk in the fact that, you know, it can become like a really positive culture piece internally, but also externally. We're noticing like with a lot of our clients that it is actually having a lot of standing on like tenders and bids. So we had a client recently in the packaging industry, and they're international, and they had a recent kind of tender bid going in, and I think like sustainability as a whole was encompassing about 20 to 25% of the bid. And they said the fact that they were a B Corp, it was kind of like a job interview. They were jumping the list for having like these certain credentials. So it is always kind of like fascinating to hear them stories like in proof or in action as such. Rolling back to kind of the assessment, Louise, was there any like difficulties in maybe like that could maybe like hinder the speed at which you do it, or was it kind of a long drawn out process, or could you maybe talk a small bit through that?
I think it depends where you are on the journey as a company. Like, I think you shouldn't be daunted if you're like on day one of ESG, kind of understanding what it means for the company, because you can start today. And like Chloe said, the impact assessment is a free tool for you to use to map out how a good business should behave. So I think you don't necessarily need to be against a clock in order to certify. I think you can start to use it to get your house in order a little bit, and it means when the time comes that you want to submit the assessment, you'll be comfortable and familiar and ready to go. So I think, yeah, some of it really does depend on what you're up to and what you've been doing. How much you know about if you do make a product, how much you know about your supply chain, or if you're a service, like how much you know about your scope 3 or your client list or whatever it might be. So it's very manageable to do it in steps or phases. Even when I was leaving Strong Roots, actually, I'll get into the Strong Roots story and how B Corp was a massive selling point when Strong Roots was acquired in a second. But when I was leaving Strong Roots, the last kind of big job I did was map out the plan for the next recertification under the new standards. And even though before I delved into them, I found them quite daunting from the outside, once I really explored what they would mean for Strong Roots specifically, it was totally a doable job to map out, okay, over the next 12 months, what will we be doing to make sure we fulfill these requirements. And the lovely thing that Chloe mentioned is that based on the size of your business, how long it's been around, how many people work for it, what your revenue is, what you do or make, your assessment will be tracked to that. So it's not like you'll need evidence of, you know, like 1,000 successful investments if you've just started 2 years ago or whatever it is. They won't be asking for things that are totally inconceivable to a small business. They won't be asking a big business for minute details. Maybe that would apply to a small business, and back and forth. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that they're meeting you in a place that's very realistic for your business to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking in the comments there. So as Chloe rightly pointed out, Out West Clothing, so a Kerry-based kind of cool outdoor clothing brand, they recently won a bid against 40 companies to rent premises in Dublin to expand our retail stores, largely due to being a B Corp. So, you know, that's that, like, seeing that in action and actually reading it is no, it's quite fascinating to say the least. We have a question here from Trina. Do you have advice in getting support to get certified? I've worked with a consultant, Kira, for some sustainability work. I feel like I would need to hire someone for help. Are there lists of consultants, or would a general consultant be good to work with? Trina, we're quite nice consultants, if that's any spin. But there's a range of supports, kind of as an overarching view. There is plenty of sustainability grants that are actually on offer by Enterprise Ireland and local LEOs. So they offer up to 5k for small business, and if you're a larger business, you can get funding of up to 50k. So it's actually a stark difference between the UK and Ireland. Right now is the fact that there's so many supports and so much grants for B Corp or potential B Corps looking to kind of explore it. And it's really encouraging to kind of see these supports provided by the government. So we actually have guides ourselves on kind of how to go through the funding and that whole kind of end to end. But yeah, listen, if you want to kind of reach out, or Chloe has another list of B leaders here. So B leaders are like the stalwarts of the B Corp movement. There is plenty of supports and plenty of expertise here on the call and elsewhere.
Yeah, I had mentioned it to Kira. That's not what we had engaged her on, and she did say, she said she thought she needed to get some qualification, and I really liked working with her, but I wasn't clear then afterwards what or why that she may not be.
It's like it is a consulting service, I suppose, in a sense that you need to know the ins and outs of all the different impact areas, what the key requirements are for each of them, and what evidence looks like. So like the initial phase, essentially, what Louise and Chloe have ran through is the assessment. And on the old standards, you were scored on it, but on the new ones, you'll have a set of mandatory requirements. So there's definitely kind of like a piece of like value and skill and knowledge to be able to know how to go end to end on the process. But as Chloe said, there's so many supports. We can gladly like hop on a call with you for 15-20 minutes to give you a bit of an understanding. There is a list. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't want to be too happy to give you a full breakdown and kind of show you exactly what it looks like from start to finish, essentially. Has anybody, we might open the floor up a wee bit actually, has anyone got any kind of like burning questions or pieces of knowledge they'd like to share, or their 2 cents on maybe sustainability as a whole or B Corp?
Can I add in the end of my journey with Strong Roots, which was Strong Roots was acquired by McCain Foods, but McCain Foods being, you know, the chips, and they came on first as a minority investor, and they were really impressed by the B Corp status, and eventually acquired the entire business. But I will say I have seen it from the inside, and I have no reason now to misrepresent this, but I've seen the B Corp kind of safeguard work in action. So as a company that was acquired by a larger business, Strong Roots was kept as a separate business unit with separate governance. This had literally never happened before in McCain. This is how important like our reputation and our status were to McCain Foods. Kept as a separate business unit, separate P&L, governance, constitution intact, which contains those B Corp values. So I just think it's really important to highlight that it does actually function as intended, and it is really important to a lot of businesses that might be B Corps themselves to support that status. And it was really heartening to see that. And really the only reason I left Strong Roots is because Strong Roots was part of a bigger machine now that is McCain, and I just realized I'd love to actually go back to working with a small or medium company, maybe that's nearer the start of their sustainability journey, and kind of walk that journey again with somebody else. So it wasn't actually like a drastic situation of me finishing up with Strong Roots. It was 6 years later. I was ready for a new challenge, but I will say it was really cool to see that B Corp safeguarding in action, and to see the respect that McCain have for Strong Roots. And even in conversations around any kind of like rejigging or restructuring, they'll say, okay, remind us again, what do we need to do to make sure you guys kind of remain intact as a B Corp, as a separate unit. So definitely a very powerful kind of thing to witness when you're at what might be the end stage for some businesses, which is being acquired by another one. You can still see the ethos living on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like a full rounded journey, essentially, from like initial B Corp certification to the point where
end.
Yeah, to the end, really. But
not the end, no, the next phase. But
the next
definitely
phase,
very cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely so cool and interesting. Patricia has raised her hand.
Hi, how are you? Thanks so much, Gavin. Thank you so much, Chloe and Louise. Always in all, Louise, always. I have a business called Pragmatica, and we are consultants for ESG and sustainability. And one of the things we do is B Corp. And what I would say from our journey doing that with mostly B2C, but also a few big like logistics and whatnot brands, is that I feel like we end up working as business consultants rather than just sustainability. You end up helping mainly the small businesses, the one woman, one man band. You end up helping them with topics that are far beyond, that sustainability journey. You would look into their KPIs and, their sales process or their HR handbook, so you go through so much more than sustainability. And I, like yourself, Louise, I fall in love with the small businesses and I want to walk the journey with them. And suddenly I'm like, should I work for them? So I'm always at the end feeling like I'm betraying my own business. But the reality is I feel like B Corp is a brilliant way to not only obviously structure that sustainability journey, and now in the new year even better, but also it's a brilliant way to structure your business. So I feel like when we're selling it, to potential clients, it's like we're actually going to go through every little corner aspect of your business and try and embed sustainability in there in a way. So personally, I love that, and I find that very beneficial for the client as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Would have to agree in the sense that like sustainability for small businesses, when we're kind of brought in to help them, it encompasses so much more. You are kind of falling into every different department, and they do want you to be an active kind of part of the team. And we've definitely felt kind of with our clients that you are seen as an extension of the team, and that's where like the real kind of piece of value occurs. So that's what really kind of cherishes these long-term relationships with clients, and also kind of really has additional benefits outside the realms of sustainability. So would absolutely agree there, Patricia, in that sense. Have we got any more questions? I'm conscious we're coming up to 10 o'clock here, so if anybody needs to jump at 10, we might just kind of go through the closing remarks as such. I think I do have another slide or two. We have the QA and audience form, which we most definitely had. We do have guides, as I said. If you're thinking about becoming a B Corp, we can happily share plenty of resources after the call. If you're in that like initial ideation phase or have that like enthusiasm and excitement about becoming a B Corp. But also on the second stream of things, for anyone who is somewhat confused by the new standards or sees it as a big, hairy, scary thing, Chloe politely said that there's plenty of resources on the B Lab website. But again, we like to kind of back these up with our own resources and to kind of break it down specific to industry as well. So I suppose just to kind of close things off, I had to put this in as a laugh. So reach out to myself or Will if you're interested to kind of take your pick. You can either go for the Jack Charlton of this world, or you can go with the goal scorer who is the famous Ray Houghton. If you're anyway intrigued, huh?
You need Troy Parrott. You need to update the slide.
Troy Parrott, I know. Yeah, he was amazing, wasn't he? So that's the dynamic duo of Future Shift, essentially. But yeah, listen, we're keen to help out anybody who wants to kind of explore B Corp. but not just B Corp, kind of anything along the streams of sustainability strategy, carbon reporting, the whole kind of sphere of sustainability. So I suppose just kind of close things off, I have to give a massive thank you to the wonderful Chloe Healy and Louise O'Connor, who are so great to kind of hop on the call with us today. I would love to have them on another Shift community sessions down the line. So I'm putting that little word in now. But yeah, thanks everyone so much for attending today. We'll be in touch through email and we can share the webinar or resources if you're kind of looking to figure out more. So have a fantastic week, and yeah, hopefully we will be celebrating a World Cup entry next time.
It feels like we've already won.
Yeah, it feels like we've already won. Yeah.
I think we need to stop here.
It'll be B Corp month when they're playing next, I think.
Oh,
so yeah, maybe we'll find a
Right.
way to incorporate that into B Corp month.
Yeah, genius idea. I'll be on hand to that.
Okay, thanks all.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks folks.
All right,
Bye.
folks, have a great week. See you now.
Cheers.